I never imagined I'd become the person who settles. But here I am, Emma 30 and looking back. Maybe I should have seen it coming. We all have that little voice inside warning us when something feels off. But sometimes the fear of being alone or the pressure to have someone makes us ignore those signs. When I met Mark, he wasn't what I pictured for myself. I had just ended a whirlwind relationship with Jake, exciting, unpredictable, but ultimately unstable. Mark was different, safe, dependable. The kind of guy my family would approve of. That should have been my first red flag. He pursued me relentlessly. Texts, surprise dinners, remembering the smallest details I mentioned once. It felt almost desperate at the time. All my friends were settling down, and I felt this overwhelming pressure to do the same. So when Mark proposed after less than a year, I said yes. He wasn't bad-looking, had a stable job, and seemed genuinely devoted. Plus, he owned a condo downtown. I thought I could do worse, right, my close friend? Olivia wasn't convinced. Emma, do you truly love him, or just the idea of being married? She asked at my bridal shower. I'd had a few glasses of champagne and was reminiscing about Jake, my ex, and how exciting he was. I brushed it off, but deep down I knew she had a point. The wedding was beautiful. I made sure of it, months of planning, every detail perfect. Mark just smiled and swiped his credit card. He was never stingy. I'll give him that. Our honeymoon in Italy was exactly what I wanted. When we returned, he surprised me with a new SUV, practical, safe, and all mine. Life settled into a routine. Mark went to his corporate job, came home, asked about my day as a graphic designer. He listened to me vent about my demanding boss and a rival coworker, Sarah, who always tried to steal my ideas. He cooked dinner most nights because I was usually too exhausted then. We'd watch whatever show I was into before bed. Rinsey and repeat. It was comfortable, secure, predictable, and slowly suffocating me. Don't get me wrong, Mark is a good man, genuinely good in a bland sort of way. He remembers anniversaries, handles all the bills, never complains when I spend too much on art supplies. He even gets along with my parents, which is more than I can say for Jake, but there's no spark. I look at him sometimes while he's doing something ordinary, like loading the dishwasher or checking his stocks, and I wonder, is this it? Is this my life forever? Meanwhile, I see Olivia and my other friends posting amazing photos with their partners, adventures, concerts, thoughtful surprises. Mark's idea of romance is ordering takeout from the same place every Friday. That's when Liam started at the design firm. Talented, passionate, with a smile that made me feel seen. He got my quirky sense of humor, challenged me creatively, and had fascinating ideas about art and the world. We started collaborating on projects, then grabbing coffee, then drinks after work with the team, though it often ended up being just us. Nothing happened, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a connection. Liam made me feel alive in a way Mark never had. He understood my ambitions, my desire to create something meaningful, not just churn out corporate designs. When I was with Liam, I remembered the artist I used to be, the one with big dreams who wanted to change the world, not just settle into a comfortable routine, the worst part. I look at Mark, who does everything right on paper, and I feel nothing, well, nothing except resentment. Resentment that I could have had more, that I settled for security instead of passion, that I'm trapped in a life I'm not sure I even wanted, while he gets to be with someone who's probably too good for him. I know that sounds awful, but it's how I feel every time I see a couple who are truly in love who can't keep their hands off each other. I get this sinking feeling because I know that's not us, never was, and probably never will be. Olivia called me last week, agonizing over her boyfriend. Ben, they've been together for 2 years, and he's talking about buying a house together. I don't know, she said. He's great, but something feels missing. Is that normal? Did you feel that way with Mark? If she only knew. Yesterday, Olivia called while I was in the bathroom, getting ready for a client meeting. Mark was supposed to be at a conference all day. Olivia was still rambling about Ben and whether she should commit to a mortgage with him. Look, Liv, listen to me. I said, leaning closer to the mirror to apply my lipstick. Remember what I always tell you. Don't settle. Don't settle for someone just because they're safe and reliable. That's the mistake I made. Olivia was silent on the other end. Seriously, I continued, getting more worked up as I thought about my own situation. Who knows what I could have had? Mark was my safe choice, and now look where it's landed me. I went on venting all my frustrations about my marriage. How Mark provides everything but doesn't understand my creative passions. How he so devoted but has no idea who I truly am. How I sometimes lie awake at night wondering what my life would have been like if I'd waited for someone who truly inspired me. You deserve passion. Live. I told her. You deserve someone who sets your soul on fire, not just pays the bills. After I hung up, I finished getting ready and headed to the living room to review my presentation before the meeting. I must have gotten distracted because the next thing I knew, Mark was standing in the doorway, staring at me with this strange, unreadable expression. Not angry, exactly, but hollow. Like a light had gone out behind his eyes. "Hey," I said, startled. "You're home early. How was the conference?" "It was fine," he said, his voice flat. He didn't move from the doorway. "Everything okay?" I asked, feeling a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Mark is usually so predictable, comes in, gives me a hug, asks about my day, offers to make dinner. This silent, statue-like version was new and unsettling. "Just tired," he mumbled finally, then turned and walked to the bedroom without another word. The next few days were off. Mark was quiet, distant. He stopped asking about my work, stopped cooking dinner, even started sleeping on the couch, saying he didn't want to disturb me when he had to get up early. I assumed he was stressed about the conference or something. But when I asked, he just shrugged and said everything was fine. Men, right? They always say everything's fine when it's clearly not, then expect us to be mind readers. I decided to give him space, hoping he'd work through whatever was bothering him. Meanwhile, I found myself spending more time at the firm, where at least Liam seemed to appreciate my creativity. By the weekend, though, I'd had enough of the silent treatment. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into his coffee, as if it held the answers to the universe. I finally snapped. "Okay, what is going on with you?" I demanded. "You've been acting like a ghost all week." And Mark looked up, and the expression in his eyes made my stomach churn. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was resignation, like he'd finally accepted something he'd been fighting for a long time. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "We are talking," I pointed out, trying to inject some humor into the situation. He didn't smile. "Emma, I came home early on Tuesday. I overheard your phone call with Olivia." The blood drained from my face. "Tuesday? The bathroom. Olivia? Oh, no. What are you talking about?" I stammered, stalling for time while my mind raced. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Mark," said his voice eerily calm. "I heard you tell Olivia not to settle, that I was your safe choice, that you're not happy with where you ended up." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words caught in my throat. How much had he heard? "What could I possibly say to make this better? It's not what you think," I said weakly, reaching for his hand across the table. He flinched and pulled away. "I was just venting to Olivia. You know how we are. Always exaggerating things." His voice was sharp now. "Don't lie to me, Emma. Not on top of everything else." "I'm not lying," I protested, forcing tears to my eyes. "They usually worked on Mark. I love you. You know I love you, do you?" he asked, his gaze piercing. "Because from what I heard, you settled for me. You think you could have done better. You're not even happy with the life we have. You're taking it all out of context," I insisted, the tears flowing freely now. "I was just having a bad day and needed to vent. You know, I didn't mean any of it." Mark was silent for a long moment, just looking at me with those sad, knowing eyes. "I've been thinking about this all week," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper, "going over our entire relationship in my head. And you know what? It all makes sense now. The way you never seem that excited to see me, the way you compare me to other couples, the way you always seem distant, like you're not really present. That's not fair," I cried, abandoning the tears and switching to defensiveness. "If you had a problem with me, you should have said something instead of eavesdropping on my private conversations." "I wasn't eavesdropping," he said quietly. "I came home early to surprise you. I got that promotion I've been working towards for months. I wanted to celebrate with you." The promotion, the one he'd been sacrificing so much for, the one that would mean more security, a better future for us. "Well, congratulations," I said weakly, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. Mark ignored my feeble attempt at congratulations. "Amma," he said, his voice heavy with sadness, "I don't think this marriage was the right decision for either of us." My heart pounded in my chest. Was he really saying what I thought he was saying over one stupid phone call? "You don't mean that," I said, reaching for his hand again. This time he didn't pull away, but his fingers remained limp and unresponsive in mine. We can work through this. I'll try harder. We can go to counseling or something. It's not about trying harder, he said gently, finally pulling his hand away. It's about the fact that you don't love me, and Mama, maybe you never did, and I deserve someone who does. I do love you, I insisted, panic rising in my throat. This couldn't be happening. What would I do? Where would I go? No, Mark said, standing up and breaking our physical connection. You don't, and I think we both know that. Something inside me snapped, all the fear and guilt it'd been suppressing for so long transformed into a sudden, overwhelming wave of anger. Who was he to judge me, to throw away everything we'd built over one moment of honesty? Fine, I shouted, jumping to my feet so abruptly that my chair crashed to the floor behind me. You want the truth? Yes, I settled for you. I could have had anyone, but I chose you, and this is how you repay me. By throwing a tantrum the minute things get hard. Mark didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice to match mine. He just looked at me with a mixture of sadness and, was that pity? You think you can find someone better than me? I continued, unable to stop the torrent of angry words. Good luck with that. You're nothing special, Mark. I was the best thing that ever happened to you, and you're throwing it all away. I'm not throwing anything away, Emma, he said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. I'm just finally seeing what was never really there. Forget you, I screamed, grabbing my purse from the counter. When I come back, you better have figured out how stupid you're being. I stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me with all my might. In my car, I burst into tears, my body shaking with rage and fear. I didn't know where to go, what to do. I felt lost, alone, and utterly terrified of what the future held. Desperate for comfort, I called Olivia, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. Mark and I had a huge fight. I choked out. He overheard me talking to you the other day. Can I stay with you for a bit? Olivia was silent for a long moment. Of course, she said finally, but her voice sounded strained, distant. You know you're always welcome. I spent the weekend at Olivia's, waiting for Mark to call to apologize, to beg me to come home. But the call never came. Olivia was acting strangely too, asking pointed questions about what exactly Mark had overheard and seeming less sympathetic than usual. By Sunday night, a cold knot of dread had settled in my stomach. Maybe you should call him, Olivia suggested tentatively as we sat on her couch, watching a movie neither of us was paying attention to. Clear the air. Why should I call him? I demanded, my voice rising in indignation. He's the one who overreacted. Olivia gave me a long, searching look. Did he, though, Emma? If he heard you say he was your safe choice, that you weren't happy, whose side are you on? Yours always, I snapped, feeling betrayed. I'm just saying, maybe try to see it from his perspective. I ignored her advice and went to bed, seething with anger and resentment. Monday morning, I woke up to a curt text message from Mark. We need to discuss separation. Please let me know when you'll be available to meet. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Separation, it was real. He was serious. I went to work a zombie, barely able to focus on my projects. Liam noticed immediately, his brow furrowing with concern. You seem off, he said gently, his eyes full of worry. Is everything okay? For a fleeting moment I considered pouring my heart out to him, imagining his comforting embrace, his words of sympathy, the validation that I deserved better, but something held me back. A flicker of guilt, a nagging sense that it would be wrong. Just a rough patch, I mumbled, forcing a smile. Thanks for asking. The day dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. I kept compulsively checking my phone, hoping for a more conciliatory message from Mark, but nothing came. That evening, as I scrolled through social media, I stumbled upon a post that made my blood run cold. It was an anonymous rant from a man who had overheard his wife telling her friend that she had settled for him. The details were eerily familiar, too familiar. The post went viral. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers began piecing together the clues, connecting the anonymous rant to Mark and me. My carefully constructed facade crumbled. I became the subject of gossip, judgment, and online scorn. Mark, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. Grown to mutual friends, he'd moved into a stylish new apartment, was excelling at work, and had even taken up rock climbing. He looked happier, healthier, and more alive than I'd seen him in years. The divorce was swift and brutal. Thanks to the prenuptial agreement I'd signed without a second thought, I walked away with nothing but my personal belongings and a bruised ego. I was forced to downsize, take a less fulfilling job, and watch from the sidelines as Mark built a new, better life without me. One day I saw a photo of him with a new woman, a kind, genuine soul who seemed to appreciate him for who he was, not for what he could provide. A wave of regret washed over me, so intense it felt like a physical blow. I finally understood what I had lost. It wasn't just a comfortable life or financial security. It was a good man who had loved me unconditionally, and I had been too blind to see it until it was too late. In the end, I fee with that. Was the one who truly settled for a life of bitterness, regret, and the haunting realization that I had thrown away my chance at real happiness. The irony was, indeed, lost on no one, least of all myself.